The second one is the integration. Is the verbs and substantives, is it actually what you do learning-wise and game-wise, are they actually connected? And is what you do when you do something in the game, when you use the verbs, is that actually relevant to the learning goals that you have? And the last one is focus. So do you actually use most of your time on relevant tasks, or do you use it on something else? And where are your, you can say, attention and energy invested? The first game, I'll just show you briefly. And now it's payback time. This is in Danish, so but it shouldn't be a problem. Which are coming. I have to dig into the right place. About the first terrible department of a civilian population. I just have to find. Oh, where is it? It's a bit of a problem with the. Oh, here it is. So this is part of the learning experience. I need to shoot down the British ships. So if we look at this game, then it's actually, believe it or not, it's actually a bit fun. Not for you probably, but for me. If you look at the substantives, you can say that there's a gun and there are some abstract ships. And it's not really telling me a lot about what went on in the 1817. The verbs are about, being good at aiming a gun. And again, that doesn't really tell me that much, at least in what would be relevant for most curriculums around the world and learning experience. So you can say that the motivation is somewhat there. It's actually kind of engaging, challenging to shoot down these damn ships. But the integration with the learning goals between the verbs and substantives is actually very poor, and the focus is also almost non-existent. If you look at the second example, which is a game about cancer, it's here. This is about basically fighting cancer inside the body. It's a bit, if anyone knows Remission, I guess this is a simple version of it. And it's better because, as you will see in a minute, you will this. And then I thought, what? For some reason my laptop is not responding. Okay, anyways, I'll just explain it. Basically, you're running around in this body. You have to shoot down cancer cells before they kind of infect the body. So you learn about that there's a body, you learn about how it works, you learn that there are infections around the body that has to be fought by lymphocytes. But what actually is the main and core focus, what the verbs are actually about, is controlling this little fellow and shooting as quickly as possible down these lymphocytes. So although the substantives are actually relevant and there's something to take away, then again you have problems with the verbs. So the integration and focus is quite limited. And this is actually almost always the place where it goes wrong. It's always the verbs that kind of is difficult, because it requires that you develop a specific game mechanic for the learning content that you want to convey. If we look at the last one, it's a game about the Vikings. And it's not because I think that these games are extremely pretty. It's just to show that a good learning game doesn't really have anything to do with graphics, audiovisuals, and budgets necessarily, at least. It doesn't hurt, definitely doesn't hurt, but it's not, it doesn't have to be like that. This game is basically about raiding different cities as a Viking. And the way that's built up is that you have different people you can talk to that kind of explain to you about the limitations as a Viking and the ship you have to equip. So, how long can you go on food? How many Vikings will eat how much? How does the wind affects, and how far can you get, etc. So it starts out by you can get some information from these different sources. You then load your ship. And you can kind of choose how many Vikings you want, but if you take too many Vikings, they will eat more food. You will have a greater likelihood of actually have a better likelihood of when you arrive to actually win over the civilians. Then the next thing is that you basically decide when you want to set sail, and the wind, you have to think about the wind, but we'll just set sail. And then you have this small, which is probably the weakest part of the game, where basically you control this little ship. And you probably can't see this entirely. No. Down in the corner, there is a mini-map. So I know I'm going north towards Norway, Oslo. And I basically control the ship, which is a simulation of how a Viking ship works. So, there's a certain wind a certain way that you have to get the wind in, etc. And when I arrive, there will be a very small battle, and I will probably be victorious because it's the first mission. So it's a very simple game. The substantives are pretty relevant. The verbs are actually also a lot of the way actually relevant because the decisions that you make, like when should you set sails, what goals can you reach, how does the number of what the food you have and the wind, how does that play into what the Vikings did? So in that sense, there's a much closer fit between the substantives and the verbs, which makes it, in my opinion, a stronger learning experience. And it's also fairly focused. Obviously, these journeys become longer and longer, and you kind of get the point after 10 seconds. So in that sense, there's a bit of defocus in terms of controlling the ship, which is a bit, and I attack, and hopefully I win. I have never lost the first one, so. And as you can see, it was not a very demanding task. So obviously the motivation is not, at par with commercial games, but actually the structure and the build-up is actually pretty strong compared to a lot of entertainment games. If we look at when we try to combine the computer game model and the learning game model, then you can see that basically on the substantive level, you have, how strong are the audiovisual experience, how strong is the story, how relevant, is it the right substantives, is it the right verbs, and obviously there's also a question of what is the quality of this. And then there's a thing that I didn't mention very much, but it's a question of abstraction. I mean, it's better in my opinion, the more immersive it becomes, the stronger the learning experience, which was not the case for the examples I just showed here. They're actually pretty abstract, but they still try to present a virtual world by simple means. And then in the verbs area, you can say that you have to kind of create these problem spaces, but what really makes it a good learning game is how well you integrate the learning and the games part, how motivating this still is, and whether you're capable of keeping the students focused on relevant tasks, you can say. So just so the kind of case that I've tried to present is that I think there is a case for games to be used more widely in training and education and learning for more topics than we see traditionally in edutainment. And I think that the way to go is to get closer to commercial games where you have immersive, realistic, meaningful environments where learners actually apply information to develop knowledge, attitudes, and skills. And that's kind of what we try to do with our Global Conflict series. And I'm going to try to present a small example from this. Now, obviously, I kind of closed the wrong one, but so this is a small trailer from actually the second game, Latin America. The first one, Palestine game, was actually developed very much like the research project you're going to listen to afterwards, and then was turned into a commercial project after the prototyping.